All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into an absolute clash of musical titans who fundamentally shaped the guitar as we know it. We're talking about the dusty, mythic roots of the American South, completely colliding with the electric, psychedelic cosmos of the 1960s. Robert Johnson versus Jimi Hendrix. By looking at the hard facts, the history, and the actual guitar techniques, we're going to break down exactly how these two absolute geniuses built the modern musical landscape. Let's get into it.
Section 1. The Great Guitar Debate.
So, what actually sparked this whole deep dive? Well, it was a pretty passionate internet debate. A Reddit prompt that asked point blank, who had a greater impact on modern music history, Robert Johnson or Jimi Hendrix? It's a fascinating question, right? Because it forces us into this comparative dialectic. Are we looking at the architect who literally poured the concrete foundation, or the visionary who came along, built the skyscraper, and touched the clouds? Look, Johnson's fans, they'll argue that without his pioneering acoustic work, Hendrix wouldn't have even existed. But then on the flip side, Hendrix supporters point out that Jimi fundamentally changed how you physically play the electric guitar. His impact was just so immediate and honestly, culturally massive.
And you know, when you put these guys side by side, there are some seriously eerie, almost supernatural similarities between them. It's kind of wild. On the left, we've got Robert Johnson. Acoustic Delta blues. He's totally shrouded in this Puritan-tinged, mythic tale of making a midnight deal with the devil, right? And then tragically dying at just 27 years old. Now look at the right side. Jimi Hendrix, the absolute champion of electric psychedelic rock, seen by many as this cosmic voodoo shaman. And tragically, he also died at the exact same age, 27, cementing both of them in the infamous 27 Club. In so many ways, they're literally two sides of the exact same musical coin, separated by just a few decades and an amplifier.
Moving on to Section 2, the Crossroads legend.
Okay, so to really understand this debate, we've got to track the actual physical timeline of the music itself. Because the blues didn't just stay put in the South. Back in the 1930s, you had out-of-work men traveling during the Great Depression, and they spread that Mississippi Delta blues, Robert Johnson's turf, far and wide. Then fast forward to the 1940s and 50s, musicians migrated north to big cities. That gives us the electrified Chicago blues from guys like Muddy Waters. And finally, in the 1960s, those very same blues records crossed the Atlantic. They directly inspired the British invasion and that massive psychedelic rock movement that Hendrix would absolutely define. So you can literally see how Johnson's acoustic DNA migrated straight into Hendrix's electric fingers.
But hey, way before the music ever traveled, a legend was born. And it's a crazy one. According to the myth, Robert Johnson went down to a crossroads of two highways in North Mississippi at the stroke of midnight. The story goes that he handed his guitar to the devil, who tuned it, played a few songs, handed it back, and boom, granted Johnson unparalleled mastery of the instrument. The price? Just his soul. This chilling legend absolutely captivated rock musicians decades later. I mean, it directly inspired bands like Cream to record their hit Crossroads with those famous lyrics you see here. This myth really fueled the romance of the blues, making Johnson this irresistible, almost godlike figure to the 1960s counterculture.
Which brings us to Section 3, Johnson's musical blueprint.
All right, let's pivot away from the whole devilish myth for a second and deconstruct the man's actual mechanical brilliance. Because Johnson wasn't just noodling around, he was an absolute master of structure. He took what were basically loosely organized folk ramblings and engineered them into highly structured, incredibly influential compositions. He leaned heavily on the A-B lyrical structure, where you sing a line, repeat it, and then deliver a rhyming punchline. And harmonically, he relied on the I4 V-sharp chord progression, moving logically between the tonic and dominant chords. This specific musical architecture, it is literally the foundational blueprint for pretty much all modern blues and early rock and roll.
And his execution of that blueprint was honestly staggering. Musicians of his day literally thought his fingerstyle technique sounded like two completely different guitars playing at the exact same time. How did he do it? Well, he'd run these driving boogie-woogie bass lines on the low strings while picking out intricate melodies on the high strings simultaneously. Add to that a persistent driving rhythm strumming style, something rock pioneers like Chuck Berry would steal later on, plus his revolutionary use of alternate open tunings. Put it all together, and you have one single guy producing this massive wall of sound that just shocked anyone who heard him. He was laying down the heavy groundwork for the rock rhythms of the future.
All right, Section 4, the Hendrix Revolution.
So if Johnson built the acoustic foundation, Jimi Hendrix came in and completely electrified it. He armed himself with an entirely new sonic arsenal. Hendrix didn't just plug his guitar in, he treated the amplifier itself like an instrument. He pioneered controlled feedback to make his guitar sound like screaming sirens or falling bombs. Think of that iconic Woodstock performance, right? He absolutely mastered the wah-wah pedal to get these expressive, almost human vocal-like tones. He used microtonal string bending and deep vibrato to just pour raw emotion out of the wood and wire. He pushed the Stratocaster into sonic territories no one even knew existed and instantly changed the entire trajectory of rock history.
Section 5, Blurring Rhythm and Lead. Okay, we really need to dive into this specific rhythm method Hendrix used because it forever altered how the guitar is played. Hendrix blurred the line between rhythm and lead so completely that his rhythm parts just feel alive. They feel melodic. Here's how he did it. Step 1, he ditched those rigid, clunky, full bar chords and swapped them out for compact major triads and the middle strings. This totally freed up his hand. Step 2, with that hand free, he'd use his pinky to throw in these fluid little embellishments, like suspended fourths or sixths. That's what creates that gorgeous flowing movement you hear in tracks like Little Wing. And finally, step 3, he'd literally hook his thumb over the top of the guitar neck to hit the bass note on the low E string. That splits the chord and adds this massive, thick texture. It's an absolute masterclass in turning a single guitar into a full symphony.
But Hendrix didn't just evolve the physical playing, he totally flipped the lyrical themes too. Let's look at the contrast. Johnson's world, it was deeply rooted in this Puritan-tinged fear. We're talking demons, hellhounds on his trail, Satan knocking at the front door. It was a very earthy, terrifying reality. Hendrix, though, he took those Southern Gothic demons and completely pivoted them into this sprawling, psychedelic mythology. Instead of running from Satan, Hendrix is singing about mystical myths, gypsies, and cosmic magic, like a Venus witch's ring. Hendrix took the deep, grounded fears of the Delta and launched them straight into the stratosphere.
Section 6, The Ultimate Blues Synthesis. To really understand how these two titans connect, check out this powerful quote from author Greil Marcus. He points out that in Robert Johnson's final recordings, the acoustic blues tradition was essentially blown up and taken to a critical mass of possibility. Basically, Johnson pushed the acoustic blues to its absolute breaking point. He was so thorough, so wildly inventive, that there was literally nowhere left to go acoustically. The foundation he created was so towering, so complete, that if the genre was going to evolve any further, it practically demanded an entirely new, electrified approach.
So the crucial takeaway here is that they aren't really in competition at all. They're actually part of a continuous chain reaction. Think of Johnson as the priest. He was strictly dedicated to building this inescapable foundational gospel of the blues. And his work became the direct, literal blueprint for the 1960s British invasion. Then you have Hendrix, the shaman. Hendrix received what critics call a triple dose of Johnson's influence. He got it directly from Johnson's old records, he got it through Bob Dylan, and he got it through Eric Clapton. But Hendrix didn't just imitate that foundation. He offered his solos up as a sacrifice to some electric, mystical god. On epic tracks like the 15-minute Voodoo Chili, Hendrix didn't just play the blues, he utterly transcended it. But he could only blow up the electric blues because Robert Johnson had already laid the ultimate bedrock.
Which brings us right to our final thought. The truth at the heart of this entire debate is pretty simple. You absolutely cannot have the soaring, cosmic heights of Jimi Hendrix without the deep, sturdy delta roots of Robert Johnson. They both reached the absolute maximum limit of what was humanly possible in their respective eras. So my question for you to take away from this explainer today is this. Knowing exactly how these two titans destroyed the rules to build something entirely new, who will be the next artist brave enough to blow up the tradition today?